Alrighty. So I think this is season 8, episode 13 of our sales and marketing battle scars podcast or something like that anyway. And we started off without a particular topic, but our conversation quickly turned to something that drives the importance of like relationships and community. So Tim, I'm going to turn it back to you to maybe kind of summarize how we got out of the conversation and why it's so important for anybody out there who's watching and listening to this.
Sure. And I think you're probably right in terms of the season and the episode, given all the conversations and the little videos and things we've done. And certainly the battle scars side is we've got more than enough to share. But where the topic really came from was this concept of we know there needs to be change in organizations to have different and better results.
Yeah.
One of the ways you change is to evaluate and understand the relationships you have inside your company and outside your company. And certainly inside, it's between departments. And you and I have talked a lot about how sales and marketing can continue to work together, where they can improve, how the activities of one supports the other, both
100%.
ways. And then externally, it's how making sure we're providing that superior value to our clients. So they say, yes, you're the ones we want to work with. It also extends to understanding competitors, other stakeholders, supply chain, suppliers, all that sort of stuff. But this concept of relationships, and I think we settled on, we look to make our existing relationships stronger. You do that by asking good questions, listening more than you're talking. And then we also look to make new connections that help broaden our perspective. So it's not just Tim looking at this narrow thing called marketing, it's broadening it out. And it's for everyone in the organization to be able to do that, to make sure we have great relationships with finance and production and operations and IT, so that
All of
they
it.
know when sales and marketing are doing something, there's a specific and positive reason. That helps change in the organization. You start to build that capability, and people go, those are the guys I want to be tied to because they're the ones that are making things happen.
So part of what I'm taking from that, I'm looking at my notes from our earlier discussion, is, and we don't need to go all the way back, but there's the personal and professional network or community that we're a part of. And a lot of this involves, as you mentioned, basically going out there and having conversations with people and asking questions and listening. Um, I think you made the point about how change happens when there's a shock to the system, and it reminded me, I was getting, a little comfortable, shall we say, doing a lot of work in the U.S. And then COVID happened, and I realized that I needed to not only reconnect and maybe rebuild and improve some of those existing relationships, but I needed to also get some new ones, because if I was going to be successful as a business, as an individual, I needed to have new relationships right here close to home, and that's exactly how you and I met,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago now. So, maybe expand a little bit on this notion of existing relationships as well as creating new ones, and what that looks like from a sales and marketing perspective.
Sure. Certainly from a marketing perspective, making the existing relationships better, it's more than just a hi, how are you? It's looking the person in the eye and saying, Scott, how was your weekend? What did you do? How much fun was it? Did you go to the Bomber game and cheer on the win in the Banjo Bowl? And
Are
dive
you
in
suggesting
deeper.
that sales and marketing go and talk to each other? Is that what I'm is
I
that is that what I'm hearing?
I am 100% recommending that because yeah, as you and I have spoken about, too often that doesn't happen. And of course, then you get to the assume situation where you just don't know what the other person, and if you make the incorrect assumption, you're going to get an incorrect result. So talk to people. Um, it's and you and I have talked about the good and the bad of Zoom. You just shared how Zoom was positive for you as you
Yes.
looked to expand. It's also been, we hated Zoom. Everybody got Zoom fatigue at a certain point. But I think now that we're also able to get out and meet in person, and you and I go and get together regularly, that also makes when we do get a chance to connect just by Zoom, it's as powerful
Yeah.
as it is when we meet in person because we have also built that relationship. So that's another part of the strengthening. To create new relationships, follow the same recipe. You can meet somebody in person, or you can have that first one and then look for some value that you can share. And that's going to trigger a further conversation.
I like this. So there's two things I'm thinking of. I want everyone to know that as good looking as Tim is virtually, he's
Ha,
even better looking in person. But the other thing is, so I think about people that I've worked with from a coaching perspective, and this whole idea that you just described about connecting with people. Quite often, people look at a tool or an opportunity like LinkedIn, and what I'll say to them from a coaching, because they want to make better use of LinkedIn, and I'll suggest to them, part of this is either taking the initiative or getting out of your comfort zone and reaching out to somebody. So it might be, and this is what I'm going to call like growing your community. So for me personally, I've spent a considerable amount of time not only growing my community or reconnecting my community here in Winnipeg with people like Tim and others, but also externally. And there's a number of people that I've connected with throughout the US and the UK who are sales experts. And it started off with me liking some of their comments, seeing who else commented on their comments. And then over time, I got comfortable responding to those comments, and now we're having interactions. I got so bold at a certain point in time that I made the effort, I pushed myself to reshare a post. So let's say that Tim makes a great post about something, I could comment on it, but I could also share it as my own post and add to it. So this notion of not only communicating and connecting with people internally within your organization, but also externally, right? We just make the effort to say, "Hey, Tim, let's go grab coffee. I want to learn a bit more about what you're doing." Super powerful. Or reaching out to people on LinkedIn and liking, commenting, and resharing their posts. I've actually created some really great supportive relationships within the sales community of people who will now, send me a post and say, "Hey, I'm sorry to hear about, your dog passing," or um, "I'm going to make a post here later today. Could you comment and share it so we can get some more visibility?" So now there's this community of people, within the LinkedIn world who are quite supportive of each other, and I'm learning from them. Hopefully, they're learning from me. And I think all of this is really helpful in terms of growing as individuals, but also helping us, grow from a revenue perspective. I'm doing something later this week with one of my counterparts where he's going to sit in on a training session, and that was instrumental in helping me grow my revenue. So I guess what I'm trying to do when I'm going to try to wrap this up is that you talked about the importance of getting uncomfortable to grow. And I see there's a lot of people that I've coached that are uncomfortable with liking, commenting, and resharing people's posts on LinkedIn as a way to help grow that community.
I think there's a couple of things that really pop out for me on that, Scott. And it's it's the network that you create on LinkedIn and the strength that you get, and sharing those comments and reposts, etc., is fabulous. Sometimes it's people that we've come to know, and I'm thinking of a couple of friends in particular that they're in a slightly different focus area. They're not in sales or marketing, they're in somewhere else, but they'll send a note and say, "Hey, this fits," but from the broader leadership perspective, for example. And so it's another way to learn, it's another way to share. And in those cases, it's like, great, I love to comment, and I love when the interaction happens. And that's really good on LinkedIn. It
True.
reminds me of the old days when you used to read a magazine article or newspaper article, cut it out and send it to your, photocopy and send it to your clients. "Hey, I think you'd find this interesting."
How many people are watching this are actually remember doing that kind of stuff? That's how old we are. Right?
Well, it's how old we are, but now, of course, we're so much more efficient because we can just find it online and send the PDF or the link to the article. "I think you'd find this interesting." But it goes beyond just maybe your core area.
Yeah.
If you are aware enough, and if you know enough about the people that you're dealing with, you'll find certain things that might be interesting to them. And so that expands and says,
Yeah.
"Wow, he must care about me if he's going to
Yes.
send me these types of things." I think if you also extend it internally in the organization, you start to learn something a little bit more. Like, you hear a phrase that I dislike so much: "I'm a data-driven marketer." No, you should be a people-driven marketer, because you're trying to understand people. However, what was going to help you even more is Tim, the marketer, is going to say to Scott, the salesperson, "Can I come on a sales run with you? Can I go meet a couple of your customers? I know, shock to the system. There you go. And
That'd be fantastic.
I'm not going to say anything, but I'm going to listen and observe. And I'm going to ask for a tour of the shop floor or whatever else. And so that I can get a firsthand understanding. So that when I come back and I'm doing my job, I'm not just looking at numbers. I'm not just trying to create something creative for the sake of it. It's like, no, I have a better understanding now. I also put myself in a situation where I can have a different level of conversation with Scott. Yes, I know it's a small
Yeah,
sample size. Maybe I need to do that at least on a quarterly basis and do those sorts of things. So, yeah,
100%.
I think you're right. Strengthening the relationships inside and outside, tools like you described with LinkedIn, etc. I think it's a fantastic way to help you grow as a professional.
So one of the things that I wrote down in our conversation before we hit the record button was, and I captured it, this idea, as a professional. So whether this is people within the organization or this is the broader LinkedIn community we've been talking about, is to surround yourself with authentically positive and supportive people. And you and I have talked about how we've come to have that relationship ourselves. We've talked about other groups that we're connected with, like the Orange Group, and how all of these people are authentic, they're positive, and they're supportive. Which brings me to the final point, if you wrap this up, is the importance of having those external professionals around us who have that external perspective. They can be objective, and they can help us grow and get better. And that works as individuals, but also as for companies as well.
For sure it does. And it's interesting when you talk about that concept of authenticity, reminds me of a phrase that I learned playing football at the University of Manitoba all those years ago. And we had a phrase called, we'd say false chatters. So someone's, you know, barely clapping and looking around. Oh my gosh, yeah, good play, good play. You weren't excited, you weren't authentic. The good one was when somebody made a great play and you high-fived it and gave them a hug and stuff like that. And I think that still holds with business today. It's
Yes.
we can see through somebody when they're not being authentic. And you can, all right, now I've got to keep my guard up because I can't trust you anymore. And so when you look beyond and when you're looking to continue to build those other relationships, if you're authentic with the people in your LinkedIn network, again, to use as the example, you've just given another example of where people come back. The fact that somebody's going to say, hey, can I come in and add some value to the material you're teaching? It's great. I get very fortunate. The interviews I've done with experts from around the world in marketing and some of the classes I teach at the UW, and the fact that I can put up these videos for the students to see, the fact that some of them will say, hey, you know, you got a class coming up, I'm happy to come in and talk about advertising or marketing, whatever. And they'll spend an hour with the students. And I'm looking at them going, you guys have no idea how lucky you are. But it's that ability to step out, to add something, and then you realize there's a ton of really good people in the world.
Yeah.
So those are the ones you always want to make great connections with them as well, too.
We've talked before. I think season 3, episode 8 was about authenticity. Um, but I think all of that's really important, and it's funny because you know I made a note here about the importance of internal and external change agents and business influencers. And again, obviously that's what TK3 and SBD does. But you made another comment that I wrote down here, and we'll wrap up on this one. Is that you talk about people doing business with people. So all of the stuff about community and reaching out to people and having those real authentic conversations is all about people doing business with people. And I would challenge anyone to find an area of the business when you're doing business to business, what area of doing business is more human, more people interactive than sales and marketing.
Amen. I can't say it any better. That's a fantastic conclusion and wrap it up.
So there you go, folks. The importance of community, reaching out to people, learning, connecting, supporting, amplifying people's messages. And again, people do business with people. And some of those really great people are in marketing and sales, and they're working really well together.
Absolutely.
All right, Tim.
Take care, Scott.
Okay, take care.